Katanat social welfare jong kasorkar Meghalaya hapo ka drug reduction elimination and action mission DREAM ha ka iatreilang bat ka Indian Drug Users Forum bat Meghalaya Users Forum kalapan long ya ka multi stakeholder symposium ha ka arpan rio trik jilio ha vantage long kani ka jingalang banyaslok bat ki babuan ki badan benta kadai kum shi benta ban snok tilang ban rakhe International Day Against Drug Abuse and Illicit Trafficking arajar arpusa. Habakran ha kani ka jingalang umentri ka social welfare uba polling do uloong. Benta bon na phi kidan benta ha kini ka program bat kani ka pen i bangila janban tip ya ka jingshisha. Uba polling do uloong ru baka sorkar kalapan i bakidan ka jingtmu ba shisha dan jingmantoy ki kam penroy dan jingmantoy hak kam jungok kai perthei bat ki kam surok kin la ban pen urlong ya ka jingtmu ka balabu ula ong ru ka Meghalaya kalapoy siya ka jingtip bangidan kam ban pen klanya ka jing kun persya ya ka jing khai bean bat ka jing di drok kani ka de ka jing pen ma baka imlang sa lang kadan ka jing jiet ban long nong job ni lanat jong ki jinglong jingman uling do ula ong ru ban light na ka jing no ya ki wei dei ban pen i ya ka jing duna kalong ka badan kam ba man la wei pa wei nangi ban shim ya ka ni kum ka jinga kun jong ni ula kun turu ya baroh ki seng tre kam bhalang bat ki nong ya lam niam ban kan ma ba ka lawe jong ka jilla ka lawe jong ki khulung khna ka dan haki ka thong jong ka ni ka symposium kalong ban wanra lang ye kin hun ba pher ban ya kran halor ki mat ki ba kong san ki baya dei ba ka jing di drok ba ka jing khai be an
This year's celebration of the International Day Against Drug Abuse and Illicit Trafficking is good. The evidence is clear. Invest in prevention. Huge potential of its vast human resources, and yet the percentage of HIV positive persons being well above the national average is a stark reminder that we need to get proactive. I also welcome and acknowledge the presence of our judicial officers, government officials, the Meghalaya Human Rights Commission, NGOs, our Prabhashnongs, faith-based institutions, educational institutions. We could see that the response to today's celebration is again enormous and encouraging. And when we last met at the State Convention Center, one point that was repeatedly made was that whether the government is serious about tackling the menace of drugs. Today, I could see a number of you coming back to another deliberation invited by Social Welfare Department, which means that the trust deficit has somehow been mitigated. We are coming closer to a point of realization. Because the last time around, I remember one of the leaders of the Prabhashnongs asking us whether we are here just to have a cup of tea with you, or do you mean business? I think today we have shown that we do mean business. No amount of developmental activities, no amount of investment in tourism, no amount of investment in the road sector can yield the desired results if all our initiatives are towards facilitating and creating infrastructure for a generation of drug addicts and alcoholics. It would defeat the very purpose of even having a government and a system of governance in place. So today, I'm happy that I could sense that guarded optimism which is evident in all of you coming here together. And more importantly, we have listed as a subject immediately after the vote of thanks a panel discussion where the discussion centers on legal provisions and policy advocacy in regulating drug use. NDPS Act, PIT NDPS Act, where our panelists include a senior advocate, Srimati Tripti Tandon, senior advocate of the Supreme Court, and Mrs. Tashlin Kharpateng, district and sessions judge. A major gap in arresting the trend of the resurgence of drugs and the emergence of drugs culture in Meghalaya is the need felt by all stakeholders that somewhere there are gaps in implementing the law, that there are striking gaps that make it possible for people to get away with trafficking, and that the laws are such that they are more for the traffickers and more against civil society. I think it is very pertinent that we have engaged the intervention of legal experts to speak on this theme. I encourage all of you to pay attention to the presentations and also come up with suggestions, queries, and engage yourself fruitfully with the discussion. Friends, the fact that today Meghalaya has moved to a realization that we need to escalate, we need to elevate our engagement on the problem of drug trafficking and drug use is a timely reminder that society has the choice to either be a victor or be a victim of circumstances. We have seen that a society like Punjab, a state that had so much in terms of its youth potential, so much of its capability in the field of sports and defense, how it was gripped by the crisis of drugs, and almost every household had a victim, had a drug user, which fundamentally undermined and had the potential of destroying the resources of the youth. And that should act as a lesson to each one of us here. At one point of time, Meghalaya was a transit point of drugs and narcotics. But today, it is no longer just a transit point. Drugs have reached every nook and corner of the state. It is very important, and I make this plea to each one of you that we need to act, put our acts together. Let's not indulge in any blame game. If there are any gaps in policy making, any gaps in the way that the police, the home police functions or the Department of Social Welfare functions, do feel free to interact and point out those gaps and deficiencies to us. But it's very important for each one of us to claim this as our own battle. We are battling a menace that has the potential of destroying society for good. Therefore, I would urge each one of you at each level, whether as NGOs, whether as faith leaders, to constantly keep this in mind, that the future of this state, the future of the young generation is in peril. We must take up the cudgels on behalf of society. I reiterate that as a government, we do not claim to be the ultimate repository of all wisdom. We are learning from day to day. And today, if anyone can say that you could notice that there are rising incidents of drug trafficking, you would also look at the bright side of things, which is that government is also proactively pursuing these offenders, which is why the rate of recovery and rates has gone up dramatically. We want to upscale our fight, but to do that, we need each one of you to engage yourself actively and come up with all suggestions, ideas. As I said in the last meeting, there are acts and regulations that are already in existence. We need you to come forward. And the way the VDP in a decade back had fought the rising spurt of crimes in the capital town of Shillong, those years, 15 years back, today that same institution has to be revived. And yes, I understand that there are groups that would like to proactively catch hold of drug traffickers and drug users. But then, please remember that it's a very sensitive subject and one cannot take the law into one's own hands, because ultimately doing that would be to the benefit of the drug traffickers and the drug users. The discussion that will take place soon after this address, I'm sure will unravel the intricacies of the law and empower you through your understanding of what is the correct course of action to take. But as a government, I would once again seek and solicit your support, because we need to come up together and ensure that we get rid and eradicate this problem. The sooner, the better for each one of us, and we can do that through that core belief